Howdy, and welcome to the Jackass Rampant Playbook, your source for advanced Blood Bowl strategy. I'm JR, and in this 5-part series I'm going to talk about the math around what happens on and after an armor roll. So armor and injury rolls in the best edition yet of Games Workshop's best game and one of the coolest board games of all time, Blood Bowl 2nd Season. You heard me, haters. BB 2020 has flaws, but there's so much to love. Anyway, this video is about what happens after a knockdown, the dreaded armor and injury rolls. Yes, I spell armor like a Yank, because that's what I am. This is part 1 of 5. In this video, I'll provide some basic concepts before we dive into the nitty-gritty. Part 2 is about unmodified armor and injury rolls. Too many dice gamers don't really know how dice games work, so I'll give you a foundation to build on. In addition to the math, I'll highlight key conclusions you can apply immediately. In the third video, I'll go over the various modifiers to these dice, such as damage from the crowd, foul assists, damage skills like Claw or Mighty Blow, plus Thick Skull, and skills like Stunty as well. Then, in the fourth video, I'll show you how these modifiers interact with each other and offer some comparisons. And finally, we'll go over the casualty table, which is its own beast. I'll discuss the apothecary, the regeneration and decay traits, and niggling injuries. There will be advanced armor and injury discussions to follow, such as my video on the riddle of armor, about how the same odds might be seen in different ways by different coaches at the same time, a piece on the total value of a knockdown, and plenty of others, including a historical analysis of armor and injury rules since 3rd edition, an article on the net value of a foul action, and more. Okay, so about dice math. One thing I can't stress enough is that dice math by itself does not win games. You have to do the right math or you're going to mislead yourself. You also have to apply it in ways that are productive, and it's important to see it as just part of a larger picture. Looking back on crazy plays and asking, what are the odds, is fine, but if all you do is use that to justify your self-pity, it's not going to do you a lot of favors. One funky quirk of this kind of reasoning is that probability can be boiled down into hard math, and that makes people think it's automatically important or predictable. Sometimes it really is important, which heightens the illusion. Keep this in mind throughout all types of dice math reasoning, and let the context tell you what kind of math to do and how much credence to give it. There are 4 times you use dice math, and they're all different. During team management, during pre-game planning, in-game decisions, and post-match musing. Any of these may involve armor and injury rolls, though personally I think I do more AV and injury math in team management than in other phases. Your mileage may vary. First, when you make your team, and when you pick skills and hire players between matches, it's helpful to have hard math to compare skills and stats. You have plenty of time to think and be meticulous at this stage. However, here the dice math is more abstract. You don't know exactly what the circumstances will be, you just want to set yourself up for good stuff. For this reason, you should be gaming around the big picture. Dice math might be used in team management when deciding on skill progressions, or when debating between 2 different player positions with different AVs. Second, before each match, you want to size up your opponent's roster and strategy, know your enemy and all that. This means you have to have a specific foe to game around. You can look at their roster, you can get an idea of their strengths and weaknesses, and you can sum up the math in advance. Note that in some formats you don't know who you'll play until they show up, and this doesn't apply in that case. When you're planning ahead, you should not overthink the next match. There's a lot more variance in one game than there is in a whole season, so you should just be aware of the math while you work out your plan. AV and injury math may help you figure out how to set up, whether to run square or trap screens, whom to foul, and how to use your big guy or blitzer. Third, you use a simplified, streamlined kind of math with lots of shortcuts while the game is going on. This is the most important math, even if it's often the sloppiest. You know it's applicable because you're in the moment using it. While the clock is ticking, it's helpful to just remember the key numbers by rote and to simplify your math as much as possible. This is where familiarity plays the biggest dividends. AV and injury math might be used early in the drive when deciding where to blitz against the screen, or later on when debating whether to mark a player, for instance. Finally, after the match, you can look at specific scenarios to see what went right or wrong, whether you were outplayed or lucked on, and to muse on the odds of some improbable event. After the match, you have plenty of time to crunch the numbers, review what happened, and see what you could have done better. You can be really precise, too. However, it's tempting to overweight your conclusions just because you experienced the outcome and did the math. So many dice get rolled that crazy outliers are just a thing, and for every one that irks you, there are many you don't even notice. On Fumble, you can see how many blocks each team threw, how many player turns were played on each side, and even watch a replay of the match. I found that helpful. One last thing. Armor rolls are not like dodges or blocks. Most Blood Bowl rolls can go awry, and there's a nugget of wisdom that says roll as few dice as possible. Okay, so that nugget is a bit simplistic, but it points to a larger truth, and that larger truth mostly doesn't apply here. Armor rolls are not like other rolls. More is better, well, usually. See, if you're rolling armor after a knockdown, anything that happens is gravy. From your perspective, never mind is the worst possible thing. There are some exceptions, though, chiefly fouls, but also stabs, projectile vomit, and chainsaws. On a foul, you can get ejected. With a stab or a successful saw or puke attempt, the defender may hit you back if you don't break the armor roll. But most of the time, armor rolls are house money. To recap, dice math is important and useful, but only if done right, done productively, and kept in perspective. There's a lot more to this game, and besides, all the probability knowledge in the world won't save you from a sea of ones and skulls, or for that matter, pows and sixes. There are 4 times you use dice math in Blood Bowl: when building and developing your team, ahead of a match, during the match, and afterward with the benefit of hindsight. Each of these offers possibilities and limitations, and there's a different right way to approach each. Finally, it's important to note that avian injury rolls from knockdowns are gravy. This is not true for fouls and doesn't automatically justify your overblocking tendencies, but all else considered, when it comes to AV rolls, the more you make, the merrier you'll be, on average. This was the introduction to AV and injury rolls. In the next video, I will lay out the odds on unmodified rolls against quote-unquote standard opposition. After that, we'll go into the various modifiers, then how they combine, and finally we'll talk about casualties. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching the Jackass Rampant Playbook. Like if you dig what you're seeing. Subscribe if you want more. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll answer to the best of my ability. Most of all, have fun and good luck.